Hey y'all, this is Sean. And so before we get into this week's episode, I want to take a moment to speak from the heart about something that has really been sitting heavy with me over the last several weeks. And so if you subscribe to our newsletter, our biweekly newsletter, you know that within our last newsletter, I opened up about a time in my life when I was unhoused as a teen. And so if you've been a listener of this podcast for a while, you know that I also did a solo episode back in season 1, episode 3, where I talked in great detail about my experience with being unhoused. And so within that experience, I also talked about how one person's act of kindness by him offering me a place to stay where I had nowhere else to go completely shifted the trajectory of my life. And so that experience has never left me. It's shaped how I carry compassion, right? It's the reason why I center care in every single thing that I do. And truthfully and honestly, like it really helped shape the mission of Dem Bois. And so when I founded Dem Bois in 2016, it wasn't just about setting up a nonprofit, right? It was about creating like the kind of care and connection that can change somebody's life, just like it once did for me. And so, community, I'm calling out on my community to do what community does, right? And so many a times, within this podcast, within these past episodes, I've reached out to community and said, hey, community, do what you do, right? I've gotten guests because of this call to community, and I've gotten other things that Dem Bois needed because I called out to my community. And so this instance is not anything different, right? And so a fellow trans man of color, someone who Dem Bois has supported in the past, is scheduled to have gender affirming surgery on June 20th, 2025. And he's currently unhoused. And so unless he secures stable housing, he will not be able to move forward with his surgery because he just doesn't have a place to rest and recover. Right. And so this person has received care packages through our programs. He's also been a past guest on this very podcast. And so for his safety, we're going to keep his identity private. But I promise you, his story, his voice has already touched many of you who've heard this episode and have been impacted by the work that he does in the community. And so this is a moment, community, where he needs us. And so we're looking to raise $5,000 throughout the month of May and into June to help cover his housing costs. And this is not just about him getting through the surgery, right? This is about healing and safety with dignity and with his peace of mind. And so for folks who've had gender affirming surgeries and for folks who don't want to have it, but there are folks who do. And so for folks who've already had gender affirming surgery, myself included, the healing journey is important. It's a stressful moment, but it's also important to have a place to sit, have a place to rest, and not just your body, but rest your mind. And so I always say throughout this podcast and then through other conversations within my life, I always say I'm my brother's keeper. And so this is exactly what being my brother's keeper looks like in practice. So community, I'm asking if you're able to give. I'm asking you to show up for this, brother. So you can go onto our website. That's DEMBOIS.org. That's dembois.org. Click the link to say donate, right? And so we have people streaming this episode, right? And so if 100 people give just $10, right? Imagine that impact. And then if those 100 people tell one other person, which turns into another 100 people, right? And this compounds over the time that we're looking to raise funds. And so if maybe you don't have funds, but you say, hey, Sean, I got some leads on housing, or I have some leads on resources, then you can reach out to us and share some of those resources. So you can reach out via email. That's hello@dembois.org. That's HELLO@dembois.org. Right. And if you can't give, if you don't have any resources that you can share, you can also share this message with someone who can. Right. And so this is very important that we show up for community. And it's about helping somebody get back on their feet. It's not just about that. It's helping somebody get back on their feet, but it's not just about that. It's not about charity. This is about community. And so let's show up for someone that in a way that we would want someone to show up for us. And so I'm recording this, and this is May 2025. And so if you listen to this in the future, it's not too late to give, right? Because there's going to be always someone in our community that needs our help. And so that money will go towards someone else, even if you're listening to this in the future. And so I want to say thank you for listening to this message. This is something that's been very, very heavy on my heart over the last several weeks. If you would like to know more information, whether that's location of where this person is located, also you can reach out to us via email, and that's hello@dembois.org. That's HELLO at dembois.org. And so I want to say thank you for listening to this message, and thank you for being a part of Dem Bois family. And so on to the episode. My next guest I had the privilege to sit down with is an award-winning educator and consultant. In this episode, we talk about their modeling career, we discuss mental health, access to healthcare for youth, and so much more. This is a really great episode. I hope that you enjoy it.
Dem Bois, Dem Bois, amplifying, transmitting, color voices, yeah, we here making noise, making noise, Visibility equals possibility, you know we them boys, them boys,
Welcome to Dem Bois Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Aaron, he, him, his. My next guest is an award-winning educator and consultant. Their speeches, content, and workshops relate to the LGBTQ plus equity, mental health, and belonging in the workplace. They were also listed in the Out 100 and Business Equity Magazine's 40 Under 40. Dr. Van Bailey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful to be here.
Yes, I'm so happy and so excited to have you here. I'm just so ready for listeners to hear all about your journey and your story and who you are as a person. So you want to go ahead and introduce yourself for folks' name and pronouns?
Yeah, my name's Dr. Van Bailey. I use they, them, theirs pronouns. I'm located currently in Atlanta, Georgia, but I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant, as well as I work as a program coordinator for an organization called Campaign for Southern Equality, where I help co-lead a project called the Trans Youth Emergency Project, where we support families and their children or youth in regards to getting them healthcare access if they are in a banned state that doesn't allow them to get that access.
Thank you. I'm so glad to have you here, and just in the aftermath of everything, right? And so when this episode comes out, it'll definitely be farther in the future. But you know, listening to your career and what you do, I just want to ask you, and I never ask guests this, right? And I just want to ask you. So we're post-election, right? And so I want to ask you, just check in on you, and to ask you, how are you doing?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's super important that, we check in on each other, especially in this post-election time, because community is going to get us through. And right now for me, I have lots of emotions, I'm angry, I'm fearful, I'm a little anxious. There's a lot of unknowns. I'm also just very plugged in and focused right now on the work that I'm trying to do, particularly as it relates to youth, because I feel very, I guess I would say, moved to protect them. But right now, I'm just trying to ensure that not only am I connecting to community, but I'm connecting to the resources that I currently have, which is around mental health, going to therapy, working out, making sure that I'm staying on top of, my nutrition, things like that, because those are the things that I feel like I can control, you know, and especially in this post-election time where it just feels like everything is out of my control and we just got to roll with it and see what's going to happen. And so I'm kind of planning for worst case scenarios, which adds to a lot of anxiety. But right now, I'm feeling a lot of emotions, and I'm just trying to ground myself that, in what is in your sphere of influence, and, what can you control, so.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely, what can you control? That's a good question to ask yourself. And so I just, and just for folks listening, just really quickly, do you have any advice for folks that are feeling the same ways, right? And I'm feeling the same way as you. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling more upset than anxious. And in this place, and I'm upset because this place that I'm in, I feel like it's a common place. as far
Mm.
as how things go in society in this country. And so it's infuriating to me to know that I feel like I'm back. It's almost like playing Monopoly when you back at the starting place. I feel like that's where I'm at, right?
Mhm.
And so what type of
Mhm.
advice would you have for folks that are listening that are kind of like resonates with them and feeling the same ways in which we both are feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, once again, to ground yourselves in what you can control. And what I mean by that is, one of the things that I guess is giving me a little bit of comfort. And I recently reread The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. And for me, I think it's been really critical to ground myself in the fact that we've been here before, that nothing is new under the sun. Particularly Black trans people are some of the most resilient and brilliant people that I know. And it's not like we haven't been here. So while it is scary, there's just a lot of things that we can pull from our ancestors. And honestly, really, the most recent years, it's not like the upcoming president hasn't been in presidency before. So, for me, I'm like, we we have to rely not only on what our ancestors have told us, but also in community. And so being able to know who your people are, I think is really important. I have leaned really heavily on folks like my best friend and chosen family to not only validate my experience, but also like give me like doses of joy, you know, and still trying to find enjoyment and still being able to say, yeah, let's go out to eat, let's cook dinner together, let's do these things. But also like, really, really tap into what your local resources are. If you need to plug in nationally, I think that's important too. But also like be aware of your burnout. This can get really exhausting. And so that's why I'm really heavy on my kind of sustainability bag right now. I'm not even going to call it self care because I feel like it's like a sustainability practice. And that's why it's like, what am I putting in my body? Am I working out? Am I going to see that therapist? Am I doing all the things that I feel like I need to do to ensure that, I'm not um, kind of behind as it relates to my own maintenance. And I think that's going to be really critical, not only the community care, but that sustainability practice that's going to be really important for our bodies, our hearts, and our minds.
Sustainability practice. I know one thing that I do to sustain myself is I unplug. And it's okay to just unplug. Like
Yeah.
social media will literally drive me nuts and I just need to unplug
Hmm.
or I just need to unplug. I wasn't going to say I want to look for something encouraging, but sometimes you just can't because then all the mess come up, right, in your feed. And
Yeah.
so I just
Yeah.
unplug and people ask me sometimes, well, did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? Absolutely not. I ain't been on social media. I have no idea. And that's how I sustain
Yeah.
myself. And I do some of those other things you do as well, right? I go to therapy on a weekly
Hmm.
basis. I'm hitting the gym. I'm making sure everything that I put in my body, not everything, sometimes I have my little cheat stuff, but you know what I mean? It's like, those are the things that I can control and those are the things that I get joy and happiness from. So it's very important to maintain those things and to unplug. Like folks, some people think they literally got their phones glued to their hands and they feel like they can't unplug. Like it's going to be there when you come back in a couple of days, right? It's like, just feel free to unplug. I
I
love
agree
to.
with that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Like we just and find a community. Like we really have to find our people. That's so important
Mhm.
for validation and just to make you feel good and well rounded sometimes and tapping into your friends. And you say your best friend. How long have y'all been best friends?
Ooh, it's got to be at least 12, 13 years now.
Ooh, that's a long time to know somebody. That's
Hmm.
beautiful. Yeah. And so
Hmm.
I love to ask guests that come on the show. So your name, Van Bailey. And so how did that name choose you?
Mm, that's such a good question. So I've been Van my entire life. So, yeah, it's I guess we would call it nicknames. It's just a shortening of my name. I actually feel very comfortable with the name that I was given at birth. My name is Vanity. And I use that in modeling. It's spelled with a D, so it's Vanidy. And so my family has always called me Van since I was a kid. And, so for me, it just felt easy to kind of just, particularly as it related to my journey around gender, to just go with that. Because I felt like, particularly early on in my medical transition, when I was presenting my legal name, people were very confused as like what gender it could be. And so, I was like, well, maybe if I just go, by my nickname, people might kind of have more of an understanding of that. And honestly, I've gone back to, being called Vanity, particularly in model spaces and things like that, because I think that is such a queer name. And so for me, I'm kind of embracing that aspect of my name again. And also like understanding that it's a funny story, and I like talking to people about it. Like my dad was a big Prince fan. And so, I'm a child of the 80s, so early 80s at that. My dad was a big Prince fan. And my mother being West Indian, she can't pronounce T's. And so Vanity it was. So, for me, I just think it's just such a cool story. I think it's kind of a very kind of culturally significant name. It's very Black. And so for me, I've just been kind of fully embracing it. And Van, it's just been with me since I was a child. Like everybody has called me Van. So it's just kind of stuck with it.
Hmm. It seems almost ironic to be using it in the modeling realm, and it's vanity with a D and then vanity, like, you know what I mean? Like that having that confidence in yourself, right? That's kind of ironic. I love that.
Hey, this is Jackal from Stealth, a Transmasculine podcast. Join me and my co-host Kai as we interviewed transmasculine elders about their experience growing into their authentic selves. The term stealth highlights two important facts. That one, for our generation, we were often told to hide our past and live an underground existence. And that due to that, our stories are very often overlooked. Throughout our lives, each of us has had to navigate issues of disclosure, which have impacted us in many ways. We also have a member section where you'll get to hear some amazing transmasculine history from Black jazz musicians to Mexican revolutionaries. We hope you join us for season 5 as we continue to emphasize that transmasculine folk have always been here and that we will continue to be here. Be sure to check out our website, transmasculinepodcast.com.
So your modeling career, tell us more about that. Definitely, I want to hear more about that. How is it existing in the modeling realm as a trans-identified person?
Yeah, I would say it's varied, right? I think I would say maybe the last 5 to 7 years, there's been more opportunities for trans folks to be in the modeling industry, um, and to be in front of the camera. Because let me be clear, trans folks have always been in the fashion scene, particularly as it relates to like when we think about the folks who are doing hair, when we're thinking about people who are making the clothes. They've always been there, and models as well. But I think one of the things that I've been trying to push in terms of visibility when it comes to modeling is around having all types of bodies and races that are displayed in the modeling industry. And so for me, I've been able to partner with organizations like Dapper Q, which has a fashion show that happens during New York Fashion Week. And I've been able to model with them for 4 years, help them at one point, produce a show. And so for me, it's been really fun. But I've also learned that because right now I'm signed to a modeling agency, but that agency is based in Amsterdam. And one of the reasons why it's based in Amsterdam is because the European markets are just more diverse and accepting and understanding of trans people in front of the camera. I think the States, as we can see with this election, has a ways to go. as it relates to understanding and seeing trans people in front of the cameras and displaying bodies that are diverse and full-bodied and darker. And so for me, it's been interesting to kind of build my portfolio over the years and to see who has been more apt to like do gigs with me, right? Are there more corporations versus like more of these smaller niche brands, right? And I'm interested in like lifestyle modeling as well as streetwear. And I think, one of the things around that is being able to get people to understand once again the fullness of bodies, right? I am not a small person. So I think, being able, but I buy clothes and, I like to look good in them and trying to get people to understand that we are consumers of this clothing as well. And so sometimes what I also offer like companies that I'm working with is like, do you need some training? Like in terms of like understanding trans people and what we offer to your brand and being able to give people some gender equity or gender inclusive training so they can understand what does it mean to be intersectional even in the fashion industry.
And so how do you tap into that confidence? I was telling you before we started recording, I'm shy as hell. I don't care what you giving me. It could be $1,000,000 and I don't think I could do it. Not that I don't have that confidence in myself. I'm shy for one. But how do you exude that confidence and in order to say, you know what, I am here and I belong here and I think other folks that look like me should be here?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, my confidence came from community. So I want to be very clear. I was definitely more of a behind the scenes person. First started off thinking about fashion as a potential, like, kind of side project or side hustle when I was working with Brooklyn Boyhood and I first came on as a stylist. And it was really important for me to affirm the boys who were going to be in front of the camera. And I was more so behind the scenes, dressing folks, giving people, advice around outfits and things like that. And one of the models canceled for a shoot, and they were like, "Van, you should do it. You should be modeling." And I was like, "What?" Because once again, I didn't really necessarily have the confidence around my size and things like that. And they were like, "You should absolutely be doing it." And the affirmation that I received through community and then seeing those pictures come back and getting positive feedback and people being like, yeah, you should actually do this, help build my confidence because I definitely didn't have it at first. I was much more comfortable saying, I can dress you. I don't know if I want to be in front of the camera. And as I received like more affirmations, and then as I started becoming a little bit more frustrated verbally on the internet with like clothing brands, I started seeing that there's actually advocacy that could happen in the fashion industry as well. And so that, led to me, being able to get featured with ASOS. And that led to me being able to work with the Hush Puppies brand and things like that, because I was putting critiques out there and saying, hey, it's great that y'all put these sizes on your websites, but where are the models? Like, I have no idea what this is going to look like on my body. Great that you have a 2X, but you don't have no 2X models on your site. And you don't have 2X models that are of varying height and sizes. Like, help, you know? So I think realizing that I could pair the two around like the advocacy piece, as well as being able to say, and this is what it could look like. And once I started getting more in front of the camera, it definitely helped build my confidence, because I began to look at it as, you know, once again, being tied to our ancestors. We've always been fly. No matter what time period it is, no matter what like oppressive systems have been in place, fashion has always been a thing, particularly for Black queer people. And I wanted to ground myself in that. And it definitely helped build my confidence once I realized, like, yeah, I'm standing on the shoulders of our ancestors, as well as knowing that there's this advocacy piece that's really important to talk about as it relates to trans bodies in the fashion industry.
Thank you for doing that work. I think that's so important.
Word.
And I'm not a small guy either, right? And so it's like you looking at websites. Yeah, thank you for, like you said, thank you for having those sizes. But okay, I'm also short, so advocate for me. What is this? In different proportions of bodies, right? And it's like, so what is this 2X shirt? I see what it looked like on the 6'1" person. Okay, but what is this 2X shirt gonna look like on the 5? I'm gonna say I'm 5'3". Mind your business. Don't really ask how how tall I really am. But I'm gonna say 5'3", right? And so that's very important that we see representation of what it is our bodies is gonna look like. Especially if you want my money. I'm buying something from you, right? I'm giving you my money, and then to get it, and then now I gotta donate this shirt because it don't even fucking fit me. But had you had a model that looked like me, we would have figured this out, and I would have decided, don't trick me to buying your stuff. Right? It just let me see the representation up front, and I'll decide if I want to spend my money with you or not, and then come back maybe if it fit me right. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So, and this podcast is really about amplifying the voices of trans men of color. And so we often talk about our transition journeys here. And so I want to ask you if you, from any point that you feel comfortable, you want to share with us your transition journey and how that went and up to who you are now.
Yeah. What I will say is that it's definitely been a journey, and I feel like it's ever evolving, right? I feel like I am constantly thinking about my gender and what that has looked like. And, for me, it definitely started in terms of like knowing that I was different in my family. I definitely was the person in the family that, I always wanted to wear boys' clothes. I always wanted to play with the boys, things like that. And because coming from a pretty strict religious household, that really wasn't encouraged to like explore. It wasn't until I got to college and I remember seeing the aggressives and I remember seeing Marquise on there. And I was like, yo, this is possible. And so I didn't really know trans people. And so that was really my first like exposure. And then once I started getting more involved, particularly in the party scene, right, and started planning more like social events and things like that, and started meeting more trans people and them letting me know that there's a spectrum that you can even fall on as it relates to your transness and getting affirmed in that, I began to understand that medically it could be possible. And so, for me, it really started with another one of my best friends when I was living in California was the person who taught me how to take my, like, at the time before binders, you would tape your chest, right? And so I had to, get the ace bandage and do the tape, do the things. And that was a person who taught me how to do that. And that's when I started getting like some gender euphoria around like, okay, all right, now that I'm binding, you know what I'm saying? Like, what about access? And it wasn't until I got the health insurance really. And I took this job as a director of an LGBTQ center. I was like, oh, I have health insurance now. And I'm living in a state that's blue that allows for people to get access to this care. And so, I had to go through the steps, to do that. So what that meant was now I'm talking to a therapist about my gender journey, and understanding that it's completely valid to, if you want to take the medical route, to take testosterone, to get top surgery, to do all those things. And so I would say that happened for me around 2010. That's when I first started like playing with like shortening my name, biting my chest, coming out to my employers as trans, and really kind of playing with different understandings of transness. Like, okay, gender nonconforming, I'm bi gender, those were the terms that were being used at that time. And then, once I did start my medical transition, I first started on testosterone. And then a year later, I got top surgery. And then several years later, I opted to get a hysterectomy. And so for me, and I don't expect any other trans person to really go through their medical journey like this, but I think it is important in terms of education so people know what's possible for them. That if you do have the means, especially if you have health insurance coverage, to do those things that feel best for you. And this is what felt best for me. I was like, I want to see if it's possible for me to have a beard, and I do not want this chest, like, before I got top surgery. And then once I knew that I wasn't going to carry any children, and it became, for me, I started having more complications with having, uh, kind of more female reproductive parts. And so, it came to the point where it was like, okay, it's now medically necessary for me to get a hysterectomy. And so that's what I did. Um, and so for me, it's been an ever evolving journey. I think I've played with all types of pronouns. I think there's a part of me that still does not understand cisness, in terms of cisgender people, and therefore what's grounded in that is not really understanding cisgender men. And so, one of the reasons why I still identify as non-binary is really that notion. Like, I have no desire to replicate anything that has to do with being a cis man. Like, I also honor the fact that I had a girlhood growing up. And I know some people don't, right? Like, but for me, it's important for me to kind of ground my experience of that, because I have a very particular understanding around sexism, around what does it mean to live in a quote unquote girl's body, to experience, and, trigger warning, sexual violence as it relates to that. So none of that goes away just now because I have a beard and I have top surgery now. And so for me, it's really been a journey of like really unpacking these things and understanding, like, me purposely choosing pronouns to say all of it exists in this trans body. And for me, would I like to? I don't know. If do I want to erase my girlhood? I don't know, but I can't, and it's present. And been. I know what it's like to directly experience sexism, and now I know what it's like to not have those benefits, right? And so I think for me, it's just been. I say that gender is always a journey, and so for me, I've just kind of embraced the fact that, over time, I've become a lot more comfortable with making people uncomfortable with what they see in terms of my gender presentation. I get my nails done. I'll have like dangly earrings in. I've got my septum pierced. Like, I try to queer my presence, my appearance as much as possible, because I want people to understand that queerness is a part of me, as well as my transness is very complicated, because I have an understanding that there's nothing about me that wants to be a cis man, and my gender journey as includes a girlhood that I can't erase. So I try to embrace it all.
That was well said. And I usually ask folks, like, what does non-binary mean to them? Because it means something different to each individual person, right? Our journeys are different. We're not the same. We're not monolithic. And so the way that you describe that is just, it was beautifully described.
Hey, this is Joel Simud, production assistant for Dem Bois Podcast. Love visual storytelling? Then you'll want to check out our YouTube channel. We're bringing you exclusive interview shorts and taking you behind the scenes with content you won't find anywhere else. Find us on YouTube at Dem Bois Inc. or click the link in our show notes.
And I want to ask you, because, and this is kind of like the negative connotations in the media of like trans folks want to be cisgendered. When there are some of us who may be, right? We may have dysphoria in that way, but that's not all of our stories. I think it's very interesting how you describe that, of not wanting to be like a cis man. And there are some things that sometimes when I'm even in the barbershop, and I tell people this all the time, just even the conversations, I'm like, what? Why is this even a conversation? And you feel comfortable just saying that. You know what I mean? Like, I always say that would never happen in a beauty salon. I'm always,
right.
And so what are some things, like, just saying, like, you never wanted to be cisgendered in that experience? And I feel like, to me, this is my own interpretation, and I raised a cisgendered male child. And so, And sometimes the things that he say, I'm like, God damn, like me and your mama did not raise you like that. But that's just a part of his exposure in the world, right? As a cisgender man and being around other cisgender men. But what is it like? What are specific things that you think that when you think of cisgender men, and you're like, nah, that's not something that I want to be a part of? What are some of those things?
I think what you bring up really around like barbershop talk and things like that is really grounding and a huge reminder of just being like, I do not want to be that, you know? And I think, for me, even though I know, particularly because of my presentation and what people assume, that I benefit from patriarchy and systems that oppress women, right? Because when people see me, they're likely going to see a man, right? And so for me, I have no interest in participating in sexism at all. Not saying that it won't happen, but I feel like for me, cisgender men, there is not anything that is active in them that is giving them that subtle reminder that this might be fucked up. What you're doing and how you're behaving might be harmful. And I do not want that missing from what's really intuitive inside of me, because that's what my girlhood has informed. And so I think, I constantly want to be doing the work to undo things that sexism has taught us. And I know that as a cisgender man, it's just not embedded in them, right? It's something that has to be taught. It's something that has to be a constant work because it's outside of themselves. And so I have really no desire to have that removed from myself. Now, I do understand that there are people who do desire, like people I've had conversations said my life would be a lot easier if I was cis. And for me, I I want to honor that truth, but it's just not mine, because I feel like my life if would be a lot more complicated to really be in relationship and healthy relationships with women and femmes and even other trans people if I was not trans, and if I was cisgender. And so because I'm an educator and I'm constantly having to work with cisgender people, I have cisgender people in my family. There's always this means of like education and really trying to constantly like show humanity. And I just don't want to be on the other side of that of like, please educate me as I don't want that. Like I like having this intuitive knowledge around gender because I have all of these experiences on the gender journey. And I'm thankful for it. When I'm sitting in barbershops or even when I'm in overhearing conversations, because we're in the era of podcasting, right? And you tune into those podcasts that are just like a cisgender man, like panel, and you're like, this is what y'all choose to talk about, this is what I don't want that, so I think for me I appreciate being in a level of like almost like we have this nuance from birth that we should be thankful for. And I feel I have a particular sadness for cisgender people who just don't have that, because it's like, wow, you got to do a lot of work. And it has to be constant rather than it just being kind of a part of who you are and it's embedded, and I'm thankful for it.
I'm actually thankful for it as well. And it advises some of the decisions that I make and the things that I say. And just like you said, being in a relationship with femmes, like the same thing, right? Of how knowing, I don't know, it's just a different insight to me. And I hold that very, very dear. Like you're right. It's taught and it's learned. And I think that when we're heading into an era, or even just an era in general of erasure, and people wanting to erase our lives and experiences. And it's like, you get knowledge and you get so much beauty from folks that are different from you. Right. And it's like, if you want to continue to think and speak and talk and act in the same ways, you're going to continue to do the same thing. You're going to continue to have the same output. Right. And so it's when you integrate different things into your life, different experiences, different classes, different courses, different people, different communities, different food, like you become this, I don't know, you're more of an eclectic person. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But people are afraid of that. People are afraid of incorporating these differences into their lives. And it's not like it's gonna change you, like they want to say, right? Being around trans people is not gonna change your child, right? It's like we are who we are, just like your child's gonna be who their child is. And so it's like, but it wouldn't hurt to gain experience and exposure to other folks and other things. And I love what you're saying about people doing the work. I think everybody needs to do their damn work. White people need to do their work. Cisgender people need to do their work. We still, as trans folks, need to do our work. We all need work. Mm-hmm. In order for society to be functional in a functional way. Yeah, we functioning, but not in a way that it could be better. We could be functioning better if we all did our damn work. So yeah. It's a lot. It's definitely a lot. And I know I just started going back to the barbershop. I just started growing my hair just a year ago. And so sometimes I'd be like, God damn, like these conversations is just wild to me. Like I always come out of there like cisgender men don't give a fuck. They just don't give a fuck. And it's strange because me walking in it, they think I'm like them. So they saying the same things to me. And sometimes I'm like, I don't even know what to say to that. What I'm supposed to say.
Right? Can't relate. Can't relate. And it's one of the reasons why actually I've stuck with like women barbers for years, right? Like, and if you have your own personal like space, I would prefer that. But it's like my current barber, who's a woman, I go to, the shop there, and it's a historic shop. It's been around since the 50s. And so, they have older patrons that come, and just the conversations that happen in that space. The thing that I have appreciated, though, is that because my barber is queer, I've been able to at least like feel a level of comfort to speak in the barbershop as I haven't really been before. But I think it's like, trying to like push back on some of the conversations that are being had, or add a different perspective, or put a little flavor or question in there, So I think, that kind of stuff has been helpful for me since I have to go back to the barbershop now.
And I want to go back a little bit because we were talking about confidence, and then within you talking about your transition journey, you also talked about how you like to I can't think of the exact words that you use, but how you like to shake people up or how they view you, your masculinity, right? And you saying about getting your nails done and all of that type of stuff. And so how do you hold confidence in that?
Yeah, I mean, it's taken some time, because let me tell you something. It makes my mother uncomfortable. It's just like there are just people like my mom's like, you did all of this, and you're out here like purposely trying to confuse people. And I'm like, yeah, I also want to have some marker that I'm queer, because I am also, when it comes to, as a single person, like I'm also attracted to other queer people and want to be in relationships with them. So I also want some visual marker that if somebody does find me cute or something, they know I'm queer. We can get down together. So I think that there's, things that I have done, to also like just have fun as well, because this world is like scary, right? And so they're just, once again, going back to like what we can control. Like me going to get my nails done is a self-care thing that I love to do, and I'm like, let's get funky with, let's do different patterns, let's so it's something that brings me a lot of joy. I think in terms of like aesthetically going to like get piercings and like having different types of earrings in and things like that, like I love fashion, and I love that fashion can speak to can kind of on visual display like show your culture in a sense. And I think that queerness, of course, is a culture, and I think being Black, of course, is a culture. So I think there's just different things that I love to do aesthetically that signal to people who I am and what my values are. And so I think my confidence has built up in there, because if you can get it from your family, right, around their their critiques, I felt like I could be a lot more resilient. And there's definitely been questions of like, do you not fear for your safety? Do you not like? Why would you purposely do that? Like, people maybe mistaking me as a cis gay man, things like that, where I'm like, yeah, I have built up confidence because I am purposely out here. I fought too hard to be queer, and I want people to actually see me as such. And so I've never really thought about it in terms of like a confidence piece outside of just like I'm just doing it because I'm a queer person, and I fought really hard to be comfortable in my queerness. And I do not, once again, want people thinking that I'm cis. And I don't want them to think that, the combination of being cis and straight, like just like what can I do? And it's the self-care piece, like I said. Like I like going to, do different things. If I, go put a color on my beard or get my nails done, it just makes me feel good. And I say, for people who want to explore those different things, like do the things that make you feel good. Like don't do anything that's going to make you uncomfortable. I remember I was talking to somebody and they said, I'm not quite ready to go full out with the nails. I'm gonna get one nail done. And I said, that's cool. Like if that's what makes you feel comfortable and it kind of signals to you your kind of level of queerness and comfort, that's cool too. And that's exactly what he does now. He gets one nail done, but it makes him feel good, and he'll show me his different designs and things like that. And I'm like, that's dope. So for me, it's like, what's the comfort level that you feel is best going to serve your own kind of care?
Yeah, I agree because I actually do the same thing. I actually go every other week, get my feet done. When I first started to go, I felt some type of way. I really did because I was self-conscious.
Mm-hmm.
And then I
Mm-hmm.
started to get my toes painted black. And so I really felt self-conscious with that. I would go early in the morning, nobody was there. I didn't want nobody to see me because I just wasn't comfortable. But now I'm like, fuck that shit. This is how I take care of myself. This is self-care. Get them
Exactly.
feet. I'm like, you know what I'm saying? And I used to look around, or I used to put my earphones on because I didn't want to see people looking at me or hear somebody saying, look at him, Now I do not care. It's my money, right? It's my feet. It's my self-care. And so now I like, this is my me time to just sit back and enjoy myself. Right. And so now I'm putting on my music not to drown out what I think people may say, but now it's to really sit back and enjoy my moment in my little massage chair, right? And so the last time I went to the nail shop, there was 3 other dudes in there, cisgender men in there, getting their feet done. I say, you know what? Shit, hell,
Yes.
you know what I mean? It's like good for them. And
Yes.
I love what you were saying though, about like wanting your queerness to stand out. But what would it look like if we lived in a world where getting your nails painted didn't have to signify queerness, right? What if people just did their work and did whatever it is that they thought would feel comfortable? Because a color on your nails should not signify any gender.
Yes.
Or any queerness or anything.
Yeah.
It's just a fucking color on your nails, right? And so what would the world look like if we would just tap into what we wanted to do when we wanted to do it? How much happier would we be?
It would be so much more happier. And I just want to affirm what you said, because that was something that made me feel more comfortable getting my nails done. When I looked around and I was like, there are other quote unquote men in here. Like, so let me remove the fact that like some of it was my own anxiety, and it's a real anxiety, right? In terms of like feeling unsafe and not really knowing if people are going to look at you weird. But I looked around and I was like, oh, and then I learned that there are men nail bars, right? And so like I'm like, well, there's a whole industry of people who know that men want self-care as well, right? They want to keep up with their hands and their feet. Makes sense to me. So I think it's also like that reminder, because I'm about 5'5", 5'6", and I remember feeling really insecure about my height at one point, particularly as it related to my transition. And I remember going to the club one time and I looked around and I was like, there are people of all different types of heights in here. And so for me to think that there are not short cisgender men, or right, it's for me, I had to like ground myself that how I am is a-okay, because there are all types of bodies, and the world would be so much more free if we just had that simple notion. There are all types of bodies. People can be as comfortable as they want, dressed the way they want. It's just like in a country that values individualism so much, we are so anti like gender expression, right? When it comes to people being able to like fully express all types of genders or all types of expressions, it just is boggling to me, right? It's like you want people to be individuals and have this individualism, but then you don't want them to be themselves. So which one is it, y'all? Like we can't do it. We can't have both. If we want to actually get a little bit closer to liberation, let's really tap into the fact that yes, there are all types of bodies and people are going to do what they want to do with them and feel comfort in that. So
The one thing, the one moment that actually I shifted in my comfortability of getting my feet done. I was on a cruise, and I was getting a pedicure on a cruise, and this Jamaican woman, she did my manicure and my pedicure, and then I was telling her how self-conscious I was, because it was just in the beginning phases of me doing this, and she said, "Why would you feel self-conscious about it?" Because I was like, I can't remember exactly verbatim what she said, but the one thing that she did say that stuck out to me, she was like, "God made you exactly how you are, and take care of yourself. Take care of your body parts." Because God made you exactly who you are. So why would you feel embarrassed about getting your feet done? That's pretty much what she was saying. And so that was like a shift for me. It's like, you damn right. And it's just like us brushing our damn teeth, right? You brush your teeth. I hope you brush your teeth. Not you, Van, but anybody listening, right? I hope you brush your teeth. It's the same thing. The only certain genders of folks brush their teeth. Like, come on. No, it's a part of your body. You take care of your body, right? You clip your nails. You get them done because you taking care of your body, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. The same way that you go down to the barbershop and you want to make sure that you get a fresh cut and take, and especially the barbers now, they adding facials in and they doing all this other work that's happening. And I'm like, shout out to that, because I want more people who might identify as men or who are on the masculine spectrum to feel like they have the tools and they have the understanding of what it requires to take care of your body. Get that excess skin off your feet. Go and get your hands taken care of.
Amen.
It's worth it. You know what I'm saying? So, so it's just like, it's just a part of our bodily maintenance. And it also comes with a huge benefit of making us feel good in the end.
Right, exactly. And you don't want to be laying in the bed with somebody or anybody, even yourself. I don't want to rub my own feet together and they feel rough. Like that.
Hey, hear the crinkle crackle. You don't want that.
Exactly. Your shoes will feel better. Your feet will thank you. Right?
Yes, they will. Yes, they will.
The new Visibility Equals Possibility merch is now here. If you've been a listener of the show for a while, you know that here on Dem Bois Podcast, we believe that visibility equals possibility. And I say it all the time. Now we're introducing a groundbreaking collaboration crafted by Emilio. Emilio was featured on Dem Bois Podcast episode 37. So if you don't know his story or his journey, be sure to go back and listen to episode 37, right? But this isn't just merch. It's a movement. We're empowering trans men of color with creative freedom to design their interpretation of what visibility equals possibility means to them. Think of it like major brands collaborating with athletes and musicians, right? But this time, it's our community taking the center stage. It's great to have trans men of color designing products that represents their community, my community, your community, and that folks feel proud to put on. So be sure to go to the website and check it out. Our website is dembois.org. That's DEMBOIS.org. Every purchase goes to support our vital programs. Yeah, so Van, I want to talk about your career a little bit. And so you discussed earlier about working with trans youth. And so you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So my journey in terms of my career, right? And, I've been doing the work that I've been doing for over 20 years. And it really started in higher education. I was working for colleges and universities. I first started working as an assistant director in an LGBTQ center. And I had the unique opportunity and got recruited to start the LGBTQ center at Harvard. And that's really, I would say around that time, what I was like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be working with young people and establishing resources for them. After I did my work, at Harvard, which I will say was not an easy an easy institution to work for. Just in terms of like, I don't come from Ivy kind of education. Yes, I do have my doctorate, but it's definitely state schools. My focus at the time was working in community colleges, because I felt like that's where the people were. And so when I got recruited to work at Harvard, I had a lot of imposter syndrome, and there was just a lot of community resistance around having a Black trans person in that position. And I was young at the time, right? I was much younger. And so, I did my time there, established those resources. I did the same thing at University of Miami, started that LGBTQ center. And then I decided that I wanted to broaden my scope, because this is when the beginning conversations around publicly around intersectionality started to come into play. And I felt like I could have a bigger impact if I was in a diversity, equity, and inclusion role. And so my first kind of broad DEI role was at George Mason University, where I was an assistant dean. And then I served at University of Maryland for a little bit, as the director of their bias incident support services. So that's all in higher ed. I started feeling, transparency is really important to me, but I started feeling really burnt out, right? I'm coming out of the pandemic. And I was just feeling like there was just so much of the work that was starting to become about proving ourselves around the need for diversity, equity, inclusion, to where I was like, I think I'm starting to get to a wall. Um, I was also moving all over the country, as y'all have heard. I've been a little bit all over the place, from California to Massachusetts, Florida, right, Virginia, Maryland. I was like, I am getting older. I need to move closer back home. My dad had gotten sick. My mother is getting older. And so I was like, I'm going to look at other jobs. I then got hired with the Trevor Project, managing their online space community. And unfortunately, I was laid off a few months later. And so, I had a little over a year to do a lot of hard thinking about like what I was going to continue to do. Was I going to go back to higher ed? So I started consulting more because, hey, I had to make money. And so, that need kind of birthed me starting a consulting business and doing more gender equity training and working with people on that. And so, after I did that for a little bit, I had this really great opportunity to come in as a contractor with Campaign for Southern Equality, um, and really focusing in on at the time, which was the Southern uh, Trans Youth Emergency Project. And we saw that there was this increase in bills, not just in the South, but that were happening in other states, to where our patient navigation program needed to expand nationally. And so I was able to come on full time, and I'm very thankful, because I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Really going out there and educating people, not just around the trans experience, but what this means for young people, and how do we set up the conditions in which they can thrive, because I don't want them to continue to go through the things that we had to go through when we were younger, right? And so that's what I'm doing now. I'm working very closely with the organization, and we're doing everything that we can to uplift. Tie-up is what we call the Trans Youth Emergency Project, to ensure that people know that they can get resources and referrals out of state if they need to. We also have a $500 grant that we can give to families to around any type of gender affirming care for their child. So that can include medication, travel. Sometimes people need a hotel stay because they're going out of their own state and they have to fly. So, we try to do a lot of navigation and support of families so they can get their kids the medically necessary care that they need.
And so what if somebody listening, maybe they're a parent or maybe they're a youth and they're like, yo, that sounds like something I can take advantage of. How can folks tap into those resources?
Absolutely. So definitely visit our website, go to southernequality.org. And then, just look under the Trans Youth Emergency Project. That's where they can find all of the information on the website. The grant application is also on our website. So please fill out a grant application. Some people say, oh, I don't know. Maybe I might need. I'm telling people the resources are there. Fill out the grant application so you can get your child the support that they need. These appointments and traveling and all that can be really costly, and this money can help you do so. And if you're looking for referrals, we'll set up a call with you, and we'll talk about where you can get a safe and affirming provider outside of your state, and we can also walk you through and get that grant application filled out too. So definitely follow us at Southern Equality. We're on Instagram, on Twitter, all of that good stuff. And then also, make sure that you're plugging into our website where it's really an information hub. Like you can look on our website and see we have all of the bills tracked. People can go to their individual state and see what the bills are saying, get a resource guide if they need to, and even tap into what we call Trans in the South, which is a list of providers that are affirming that are already located in the South.
So, Van, you and I, we're both probably around the same age. We're in our 40s. I'm 43. Are you close to the same age?
Yeah, I'm 41.
Okay, so we both know what it would have looked like for us as a younger person to have these types of resources. And so, but I want to ask you now, like, how important is it for youth to have access to gender affirming care and even just support from their family?
It's life-saving. Like the Trevor Project releases lots of research and reports, including our organization as well. And we know that if a child has one affirming adult in their child, it increases their mental health by 40%, right? We know that if trans children have safe and affirming adults in their lives, their life expectancy goes up, right? One of the things I tell people is that gender affirming care is life-saving care. And that includes mental health services as well. When we do not give these services to youth, we are putting their lives at risk. There is more mental health risk for youth when they are not in safe and affirming environments, which includes their health care. Nobody wants to have limitations on healthcare, especially for medication and access to care that they need. I tell people as a trans person, I knew who I was very early on. It took me convincing the adults in my life about who I was so we could get there. I feel like if I would have had a more affirming environment as a younger child, yes, I would have definitely access, or tried to have access to either puberty blockers or hormones or things like that if I would have known that was even possible. So I think it's, oftentimes I'll hear people say, well, what if the child is confused? I'm like, I think your child is fine. I think you're confused. And it's really around your child trying to convince you and get you comfortable with this process. Talk to more trans people, because you talking to other cisgender people is not getting you the answers around what this child experiences. So I would ask people to widen their scope, to invite more trans people into their community, to listen to their child, believe youth. I think I try to advocate a lot for the youth voice a lot, because it's just the fact that they don't have agency already. The most supportive people in their lives are typically their parents or caregivers. And so if they are telling you something so critical about who they are, you want to believe them. And if you are struggling with that, that's not on the child, that's on you. And so there are support measures for parents and families and things like that out there, like your local PFLAG organization or things like that. But don't put that burden on your child to figure out the things in which you're confused about, because your child has already let you know who they are.
I heard a mic drop. Because
just that.
Yes, listen to your child. You know what is mind-boggling to me? So first of all, because I knew who I was at a young age, and children know who they are. Like, parents will allow their kids to tell them what they don't want to eat. They don't want crust on their sandwiches. They only want cheese pizza. They only want to wear this outfit 3 days out the week, right? You allow your child to make those decisions, and you say, well, that's what my child wants. But you want to give your child pushback on who they say that they are. That does it, and that's the most important thing. Not eating crust on your sandwich is least important to knowing who you are as an individual, right? And you grow up, usually when you're 3, you don't eat crust on your sandwich, but then when you're 14, you like crust on your sandwich, right? That's something maybe you're confused about. But the internal workings about who you are as an individual, there's no mistake about it, right? And that also goes back to people doing their work. And so as a parent, you need to do your damn work. And you're right. Don't ask other cisgender parents. Don't ask other cisgender people who may not even have children or even trans-identified folks. You need to surround yourself with folks, other trans folks, other different people in the community, maybe other parents who have trans children, like all of those things. And so I want to ask you, though, because we're talking about youth and within the Trump presidency, well, running for presidency, that was one of the main things he kept talking about, right? And in his words, is mutilation. That's what he says. But his thing is to stop youth from accessing these services. And so that's fearful for a lot of youth. And so how do you see that shift? Not how do you see the shift, but how do you see it affecting youth if some of those things are implemented?
Well, what we know is, we've seen it. We've seen these trends before, right? When Trump tried to do it the first time around, right? And we saw the increase in mental health crisis as it related to youth. We saw more suicidal ideation. We saw parents taking their kids out of schools and beginning to homeschool them. And so that is definitely going to happen again. We're already seeing it. My patient calls this week are very different than they were a couple of weeks ago. People are fearful. They don't know if they should leave the country. They're trying to get their legal documents together, which I say, yes, do that, right? Because we don't know which way this administration is going to go. And so I would say to build up as much support in terms of resources that's possible, whether that means, getting your child the supportive therapist, whether that means getting your documents together and linking up with a provider outside of your state, or if you are in a state that does allow gender affirming care, doing that within your state, and being proactive as possible. And I'm speaking to parents, do everything that you can to affirm your child and create a safe space and haven within your home, right? Because the world is scary enough. They should have a safe haven within their home. And so I definitely have anxiety and fear around what's going to be the possible future under a Trump presidency, but we're already seeing what's happening, right? We've already seen what's happened in Florida, where they've could just completely banned care for adults as well. So, we're really going to have to get very creative. That might mean some of us might have to stockpile on our medication. That might mean that some of us might need to travel outside the country to get this care. It's not going to be easy. But I do know, once again, we've been here before. So, my hope is that we will really look inward, take care of our own, and get the resources circulated within our community so we can get access to these youth and adults really too. So
Yeah, that's one of the nerve-wracking things too. Is like, it's one thing, you shouldn't be telling nobody what to do, to be honest with you, as far as care, and you shouldn't be telling an adult how they should care for their child. And then once and then we always, when we're kids, like, oh, I can't wait till I'm 18. I can't wait till I'm grown, right? That's what we always say. But now that we're adults, Van, and to tell somebody to tell me that I can't get what I need from my body, like, what I mean? It's like this. It's just becoming ridiculous. That's a good word for it, just ridiculous, of telling folks how to run their lives and what's good for them, coming from from folks who have no experience with it, or even have people around them that have experience with it, right? And so it you know, I don't know, it's like people, it's fear. It's just acting out of fear.
Absolutely.
Fear.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what he ran his campaign on, right? He did a lot of fear mongering. He did a lot of things around really demonizing and painting trans people as the enemy, right? And because we know that most people in this country don't know trans people, it was easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, you know, for me, I'm like, what a lazy attempt to spread hate rhetoric because it's quote unquote easy. You know, it just dehumanizes people and it makes people have a really binary and sad, to me, sad understanding around gender because it's like, don't y'all know y'all are hurting yourselves too? You know, don't you know that you're going to start making it more complicated for cisgender people to even get care? Like, stop, right? Like for people who are going to need testosterone, for people who are cisgender who might need estrogen, like, are y'all not thinking about these things? And so I'm like, go ahead and pass them and see how it's going to impact us all, right? And so you can't just restrict trans people, you know. So I'm like, look, it's going to. I wish more people saw how hate and all the isms that happen always impact everybody. It just affects us differently. So be warned what you're what people are wishing for. It's not just going to impact uh trans people.
Yeah, and then that's the sad part about it. That is the sad part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Van, this is the part of the show where I like to ask my guest a random question. I got a long list of questions. I'm not going to ask you all of them. I got a list that's forever growing. I have 57 questions now, and so you know, I just come up with them sometimes. I randomly come up with them. In my sleep, I pop up out of my sleep and say, "Ooh, this is a good question." I write it down on my list. But the question may or may not have anything to do with what we talked about today. So I want you to pick a number between 1 and 57, and I'll ask you that question. But the caveat to that is I'm doing something new now. So I want you to take one and leave one. And so I want you to answer one of my questions, but then leave a question for a future guest to answer. So go ahead and pick a number between 1 and 57.
I like that. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. 24.
24 says, "What are you afraid of?"
Wow. Okay. um I have been exploring this in therapy a lot. And I think as I am getting older, one of the things that I've been talking about is this fear of being alone in later in my life. And what I mean by not just romantically, but I think one of the things that I have been thinking about, and this is no bash to my father, but we have a strange and strained relationship. And it makes me sad because I'm like, as you're getting older, don't you want to be closer to your children? And it's just made me think a lot around like, oh, I don't want that to be me. I don't want to be so much in isolation because I can be a person that does isolate, right? I think that there's something about trans masculinity that teaches you that you have to figure it out on your own and or you have to isolate. And so that's something I am also working on in therapy. But I think about this like it's a double-edged sword around like, yes, going internal and doing your own work, but I don't want to be alone. And I definitely don't want to be alone in death. And I'm really afraid of it. You know, and so my mother works in nursing homes. She talks about it all the time around how she feels for people in nursing homes who are alone. And I'm like, I don't want that to be me. It's something that I'm trying to unpack. That's why I'm just so also not in the selfish way, but I'm just like, it's really important for me to cultivate long-standing relationships and be in community because I also don't want people that I love to feel like they're going to be alone. So how do I ensure and make sure to show up for people so they know that even as we are getting older, that you still have a solid force in me. So yeah, I would answer. Yeah, that's how I would answer it for sure. And now I have to give a question.
Yes.
Okay. If you had to listen to one album for somebody said, I'm sorry, for the next year, this is it. This is the album that you're listening to. I don't want to do your whole life because I'm like, that's not fair. But for the next year, in 2025, you only can have one album in rotation. What is it?
Wow. That's a good question. Damn.
I love music, so I'm always interested to hear what people's like musical tastes are and where they're
Oh,
at.
wow. That's a good question. So if you had to listen to one album for the next year in rotation, what would that album be? Ooh.
Yeah.
So Dr. Van Bailey, like, it's been a pleasure to have you on this show. I want to ask you, is there
Thank you so
anything
much.
that you want to say before we get out of here?
Yeah, we're gonna be all right, y'all. We're gonna be all right. And I know that it's a really scary time. I just want to ground us back in that, we are coming from amazing and strong and resilient ancestors. And we're gonna be good. It's scary right now, and that's extremely valid. But I don't want people to lose sight of the resiliency of our community and the fact that, it's just gonna have to be a little bit more. We got. We're gonna have to be a little bit more internal, and that's okay. And so, definitely look at me as one of your community members. Reach out to me, and know that I got your back too.
Amplifying, transmitting color voices, yeah, we here making noise, yeah, making noise, yeah. Them boys, yeah, them boys.